Impoverished siblings Joseph and Anna enter Wellington Manor to claim an inheritance, only to find their hopes dashed by the Marquis' miraculous recovery. Obsessed with aristocratic dreams, Anna forces Joseph to cross-dress as her at a grand ball. There, the enigmatic Marquis draws near with chilling elegance, whispering the French endearment, ma rose, as his shadow morphs into demonic forms under moonlight. Struggling in suffocating corsets and the Marquis' control, Joseph navigates a gothic labyrinth of desire. Meanwhile, Anna's envy festers. As sibling bonds fracture amid greed and deception, a lethal game of disguise and supernatural predation unfolds in the manor's fog-shrouded halls. Chapter 1. In York Minster, the priest and God's faithful prayed devoutly. Distant bells pealed through the bell tower, the green lawn, and the crowded streets, passing through stained glass windows to reach their ears, carrying a divine power that cleansed their cluttered minds and drove away inner anxieties and guilt. As dusk fell, the faithful gradually departed, and the priest tidied his Bible on the lectern. He looked up when he heard a rather helpless, anxious voice, and saw a slender man standing before him. He wore a black cashmere cloak, the wide brim of his hat obscuring his face. The hand clutching the cloak was pale and thin, lacking the hardy hair growth of men, resembling more the hand of a noblewoman. Meticulously maintained and cared for, used to please men. He seemed quite uneasy, the cashmere cloak crumpled in many places. The priest guessed that this must be a nobleman, or perhaps a noblewoman who had wronged her husband and needed to pray in the church. As God's most devout believer, he was privy to many secrets among the nobility. The priest offered a kind look, encouraging him to speak his purpose. "Madam, God loves the world, and he will forgive all your transgressions. Tell me, child, your confession." He summoned his courage, removed his hood, and raised his head, revealing a head of brilliant golden hair and beauty to rival Aphrodite. Skin like oriental porcelain, golden hair a benevolent gift from the sun god, Persephone's springtime greens adorning his emerald eyes. God had kissed his forehead, the benevolent gaze of the gods rested upon him. He was Aphrodite's masterpiece. The priest was stunned by the beauty before him, and unconsciously captivated. His beautiful eyes were filled with tears and anxiety, as he knelt before the Lord and confessed, "Lord, I have sinned, greed gnaws at my conscience like a viper, driving me to commit unforgivable errors, leading me to provoke a terrible devil. He is your punishment for my greed, the devil is always by my side, punishing me for the unforgivable errors I have committed." He said his name was Joseph, from the small town of Hebrides, raised by the sea. One day, he received a letter from Wellington Castle in Yorkshire. The letter stated that a distant uncle had fallen terribly ill, with death at his doorstep. The uncle had only one niece, and he was the only remaining male heir of the Wellington family capable of inheriting the estate. This distant uncle was the Marquis of Wellington. Joseph said, "I am ashamed, when my sister and I heard that we would inherit Wellington's manor, factories, and property, we were actually quite happy. We should not have rejoiced in the Marquis of Wellington's illness. Perhaps this is God's punishment for us, leading us to provoke a terrible devil." York's morning was shrouded in a thick fog, the dawn light unable to penetrate the clouds and reach the ground. Dead trees, enveloped in mist, lined the forest path, and crows perched on bare branches, coldly watching the dilapidated carriage passing through. Pulling the carriage was an old horse, looking weary from days and nights of continuous travel. A beautiful girl with blonde hair and blue eyes poked her head out, instantly dispelling some of the gloomy and terrifying atmosphere. Anna glanced at the woods and then retreated back inside, throwing herself into her brother's arms and saying, "Joseph, will we live in a castle, wear beautiful clothes to balls, and live the life of a noble like Miss Elizabeth? We will become real nobles, won't we?" Joseph's emerald eyes softened. "Of course, Anna. We are nobles, our ancestors, they have royal blood. You are more noble and beautiful than any noble lady." Chapter 2. From the moment they left the town, crossed the stone bridge, and stepped onto the country road, they were on the Duke of Wellington's territory. This vast territory and boundless estate belonged solely to the Wellington family. When the carriage stopped in front of the massive, ornate iron gates, Joseph and his sister Anna got out and paid the coachman his fare. The coachman and his dilapidated carriage quickly disappeared into the woods. Joseph's arm was held tightly. He could feel his sister's tension. He wanted to comfort her but couldn't speak, for he too was nervous. The initial excitement of possibly inheriting a fortune had now transformed into a fear of the unknown and bewilderment at the prospect of this sudden, immense wealth. From his father's drunken ramblings praising their ancestral glory, Joseph knew they had noble blood. Despite the reality that they were too poor to eat properly. Joseph had learned the full story of the Wellingtons from the library, newspapers, and Mr. Langdon's balls in town. Their grandfather had been the second son of the Duke of Wellington. Because of the damned system of primogeniture, their grandfather received nothing. After his elder brother inherited the title and estate, he was driven out of Wellington Manor. So, despite their noble blood, Joseph and Anna had no title or inheritance. They had never known a wealthy life and had to find ways to earn money from a young age. The current Duke of Wellington was rumored to have questionable lineage. However, after his brother's death, he inherited the title and estate and expanded the Wellington fortune several times over, even owning factories in India. No one dared question his lineage anymore. They needed to curry favor with the Duke of Wellington to borrow money and maintain their glamorous aristocratic lives. It was a pity that this Duke of Wellington contracted a fatal illness less than 5 years after inheriting the title. What a terrible shame. When Joseph awoke from his daydream, he repented his wicked thoughts and prayed devoutly for this distant uncle he had never met. Anna said, "Joseph, this is Wellington Manor, our future home, our property. Joseph, it's bigger than Miss Elizabeth's estate, countless times bigger. Oh my God, am I dreaming?" Joseph thought Anna was too excited, but she was still young and didn't understand the horrors of death. So he said, "Anna, calm down, Anna. Let's knock first. Right now, we can't even get in." Anna finally calmed down, her cheeks flushed with excitement. She was truly a beauty, with golden hair, emerald green eyes, and porcelain skin. She was the most exquisite rose in the Hebrides. Joseph was truly proud of her. She would surely become the happiest girl. Joseph found a copper wire near the iron gate. The other end was attached to a bell. He pulled the wire and shook it. The faint sound of the bell could be heard in the mist. After a while, a burly man came out. He asked impatiently, "Wellington Manor receives no visitors." Joseph explained their purpose. Upon hearing this, the gatekeeper raised his oil lamp, illuminating Joseph and Anna's faces. He stared intently at Joseph. Joseph, thinking he was leering at Anna, quickly pulled her behind him. The gatekeeper's expression was strange. After a long while, he said, "I'll inform the butler, and we'll see after he consults with the Duke." Joseph nodded, polite but not losing his dignity. "Then I'll trouble you." The gatekeeper left. Anna was very dissatisfied. She said if she were the owner of the manor, she would certainly fire that impolite pig. Joseph comforted her, knowing that the long journey had made Anna tired and irritable. After waiting for a long time, they heard the sound of hunting dogs' paws, accompanied by several hurried footsteps. Then the gate opened to reveal 4 people standing inside. The gatekeeper with the hunting dogs, the neatly dressed, wig-wearing butler Simon, the housekeeper Emma in a black and white dress, and the maid Lily. The 3 looked at Joseph and Anna impassively, then performed a standard curtsy and led them into the castle. The castle's splendor was unlike anything Joseph had ever seen. He had only read such descriptions in books, but even books couldn't fully capture the magnificence and nobility of Wellington Castle. The cushions were so soft, the fire in the fireplace roared, the wool carpets were soft and exquisite, and even the cups were Oriental porcelain. Joseph felt uncomfortable, not even knowing what to do with his hands and feet. The knowledge and etiquette he had learned now seemed superficial, useless, and vulgar. Butler Simon said impassively, "I believe there's something I need to inform Master Joseph and Miss Anna. His Grace's condition has been brought under control and is gradually improving. God be praised, His Grace is now able to get out of bed. Therefore, the matter of the will is void. A notification letter was sent to the Hebrides, but apparently Master Joseph and Miss Anna missed it. Anna's face turned pale instantly, her body trembling from the shock. Although Joseph had sincerely prayed for the Duke of Wellington's safe recovery from the threat of death, upon hearing this news, a faint sense of disappointment arose in his heart. But he quickly realized this and fell into deep repentance. Joseph offered his heartfelt congratulations and expressed genuine joy. Simon said, "His Grace has instructed that Master Joseph and Miss Anna may stay at Wellington Manor for a while." Joseph expressed his gratitude and then led Anna to the guest room in the castle. The butler and maids left, and Anna slumped onto the bed, weeping at the cruel trick fate had played on her. Joseph couldn't comfort her and could only accompany her in silence. When the disappointment and excitement faded, what remained was an unprecedented peace. Such vast wealth was indeed not meant for them. This was better, at least Anna was by his side. Joseph couldn't comfort her and could only accompany her in silence. When the disappointment and excitement faded, what remained was an unprecedented peace. Such vast wealth was indeed not meant for them. This was better, at least Anna was by his side. Tap, tap. Thump, thump. The priest heard the crisp sound of footsteps and the thud of a cane, subtly blending together in a rhythmic pattern. He looked up, following the sound to the doorway of the church where a man stood silhouetted against the light. A tall, slender man with pale skin and handsome features. He wore a cashmere overcoat and suit, a top hat, and a cane in one hand. He stood quietly at the entrance, watching, more accurately watching the slender young man before the priest. Joseph, prostrate before God, trembled all over, his thin body shivering, involuntarily evoking a desire to ravage him. A section of his pale, slender neck was exposed, contrasting with his golden hair, inexplicably carrying an erotic undertone. Poor Joseph pulled up his hood, wrapping himself tightly once more. After bidding farewell to the priest, he returned to the man at the door. They left together. A carriage waited at the church entrance. They entered the carriage and departed. The priest felt a sense of loss. He waited many days at the church, but Joseph did not return. He inquired about the Duke of Wellington's distant nephew with the noblewomen who came to pray, but they said the Duke of Wellington had no nephew. They said the Duke of Wellington did have a nephew-in-law, but sadly he had died of illness. He was a remarkably beautiful man. His death was truly a pity. The Duke of Wellington was very fond of his nephew-in-law and grieved deeply, unwilling to mention him in the presence of others. Speaking of distant relatives, the Duke of Wellington did have a distant niece, though the relationship was quite tenuous. She was mentioned primarily because the Duke of Wellington had married her. It was said that the Duke of Wellington doted on his young wife and took her with him everywhere. He kept her hidden within the manor, unwilling to let others see his wife's beauty. They envied the woman's luck while gossiping about her beauty. A month later, the priest saw that beautiful, fragile young man, Joseph, once more. Chapter 3. The morning mist still clung to Wellington Manor, the sky overcast, and the distant woods looked like clawing devils. The barking of hounds echoed through the trees, punctuated by the clatter and rush of hooves. The servants said it was the recovered Marquis of Wellington hunting in the woods. Joseph had been staying at the manor for over half a month and still hadn't met the Marquis. It wasn't that he lacked manners and hadn't tried to see him, but the Marquis had refused, citing illness. After several attempts, Joseph understood that the Marquis of Wellington didn't want to see him. Of course, no one would be happy to see the person coming to inherit their estate. Seeing him might bring back the helplessness and fear of lying sick and dying. Joseph had thought about leaving, returning to the Hebrides. But Anna refused to go. She had schemed to stay at the manor. From initial despondency, she had rallied, actively talking and interacting with others. 2 days ago, Wellington Manor held a ball, inviting many gentlemen and ladies. Anna wore her most magnificent dress, but even the most magnificent dress was a year out of fashion. Unsurprisingly, Anna was mocked by all the ladies. Humiliated, she left in tears, but bumped into the Marquis of Wellington. Truthfully, All the ladies in their finery couldn't compare to Anna's beauty, even in her old dress. One of the reasons she was mocked was that she had attracted the attention of most of the gentlemen that evening, making the ladies jealous. Anna had inherited her mother's beauty, and at her prime, she was like a blooming red rose, exquisite and alluring. The Marquis of Wellington had a servant take Anna to change clothes, and when she reappeared at the ball, she captured the attention of all the gentlemen. After that night, the whole of York's high society was talking about the beauty of the Marquis of Wellington's distant niece from the Hebrides. It was said that even the Marquis of Wellington himself was captivated by her. Joseph didn't enjoy lively balls. He preferred to stay quietly in his room and read. That night, he was reading by the window, listening to the lively laughter from the ball, without a trace of envy, extraordinarily calm. The evening breeze carried the sounds of the ball, including the piano music. The piano melody was gentle, like the moonlit sea, sparkling and shimmering, with waves gently lapping against the rocks. Lights twinkled, the sea breeze blew, and inside a small cottage, a mother hummed a lullaby to her child in the cradle. Joseph involuntarily closed his book, listened intently for a moment, then opened the door and carefully avoided the servants and the crowd in the ballroom, following the piano music to a door. He pushed it open and saw a piano, and behind it, a young woman bathed in moonlight. Her appearance could only be described as pretty, with long red hair and small freckles on her face. But in the moonlight she was the most beautiful elf. Who? Joseph froze, standing there at a loss. Wait, I'm not. Someone. Butler, Emma. Joseph fled in panic, and the young woman in the music room ran out, catching sight of the hurriedly retreating figure. Emma, the housekeeper, quickly arrived and inquired after Charlotte, the only young lady of Wellington Manor. Charlotte was the niece of the current Marquis. Her father had died suddenly, leaving her without any inheritance. Without a dowry or exceptional beauty, she likely wouldn't be able to marry into nobility. But the kind Marquis of Wellington allowed her to stay at the manor and promised her a generous dowry. Therefore, Charlotte was still favored by many gentlemen in Yorkshire. In fact, due to questions surrounding his lineage, the Marquis of Wellington had been mistreated by his elder brother in his youth. When he inherited the manor and title, even if he had driven Charlotte out, he would have been understood. Housekeeper Emma, Miss Charlotte, what can I do for you? Charlotte, I'd like some refreshments and milk. Please bring some over, Emma. Housekeeper Emma obeyed, turning to leave, but Charlotte called her back. Emma, I heard that the Marquis's distant nephew and niece are still staying at the manor, is that right? Housekeeper Emma, yes. Charlotte, so what is the distant guest like? I mean, what is his character? Housekeeper Emma paused for a moment, then said, he is a beauty. Charlotte, he. Emma corrected herself, they. They are both beauties. Charlotte, I understand, Emma. Joseph hurried back to his room, waiting for Anna. Late at night, Anna returned, bathed in moonlight, her expression excited and dreamy. She had been drinking, dressed in her finery, and looked incredibly alluring. Joseph told Anna, we're going back to the Hebrides. Anna immediately sobered up, staring at Joseph. No, Joseph, don't be silly. What's so good about going back? Continuing to guard that dilapidated house doing those handicrafts that don't earn a shilling? Letting that bitch Elizabeth mock me? Do you want to go to Mr. Langdon's ball and be harassed by those hypocritical men? Joseph was stunned. Anna, what are you talking about? I wasn't harassed, they were interested in you. Anna, I will protect you. If you don't like Miss Elizabeth, we won't associate with her anymore. Anna looked at her innocent and incredibly beautiful brother, her heart sinking to the abyss, yet becoming even calmer. Joseph always thought those men were interested in her, but in reality, their target was Joseph. However, their mother had protected them both well, so Joseph was still very naive. Joseph rarely went out, he didn't like attending balls, and his love of quiet was precisely why those men hadn't succeeded. Anna loathed her past impoverished life. Half a month at Wellington Manor had ignited an insatiable greed within her. The life of an aristocratic lady, the compliments and praise, the delicious food, the gorgeous clothes and jewelry, the attention at the ball, all of it intoxicated her. Anna, Joseph, I'm staying here. Joseph, why? Anna was very calm. Because the Marquis of Wellington likes me. Joseph, what? Anna raised her chin, like a proud swan, confident, noble, and radiantly beautiful. At the ball, his gaze was on me. He danced 3 dances with me. None of the women present, none of them surpassed me, none were more beautiful than me. The women's jealousy, the men's admiration, they tell me I possess the greatest asset. My beauty. Joseph, I must stay. I want to be the mistress of Wellington Manor. Joseph was shocked. Anna, are you mad? Anna, I'm perfectly sane. Joseph, do you know Miss Charlotte? Joseph, who? He suddenly remembered the young woman bathed in moonlight in the music room. Anna curled her lip into a cunning smile. She's the Marquis of Wellington's niece, with a substantial dowry. Joseph, perhaps we can both have a good match. Joseph stared at Anna in disbelief, speechless for a long time. Perhaps he should have known that Anna was far more clever and ambitious than him. She was so beautiful, she was meant to be a rose blooming on a pile of jewels, not withering in the dirt. But the idea was too absurd. Joseph came to his senses, glanced at the fog-shrouded woods, opened the door and went out, unknowingly arriving at the music room. He stood there for a while before turning to leave, when the door behind him suddenly opened and Charlotte called out to him, "Your name is Joseph, isn't it?" Joseph turned and met Charlotte's gaze, nodding, "Do you know me?" Charlotte's gaze was too direct and strange, lingering on Joseph's face for a long time before she managed a smile. "My name is Charlotte. Was it you that night?" Joseph, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's all right," Charlotte interrupted him. "I don't like balls either. Would you like to come in and listen to me play a piece?" Joseph wasn't drawn to Charlotte for her dowry. He was attracted to the young woman he had seen in the moonlight that night. But Anna's words made him hesitate as he grew closer to Charlotte. Charlotte's gentleness and understanding nature endeared her to him. As Joseph and Charlotte spent more time together, they became more familiar and their feelings deepened. Anna was pleased with this development, claiming her relationship with the Marquis of Wellington was also progressing. Perhaps by the end of the year, both siblings would have happy news. Joseph listened, shaking his head in surprise. "Miss Charlotte and I are just friends." "Anna, yes, friends. Your first female friend." She lifted the new dress the housekeeper had brought, holding it against her shoulder and twirling happily. "But Joseph, do you know what a charming man the Marquis is? I'm certain I've fallen in love. I'm in love with him. He's so distinguished, so handsome, compared to Mr. Langdon. No, there's no comparison." Joseph, however, was worried. He knew how these aristocratic men pursued wealth and power. When they wanted to play, no woman could escape their tender traps. But once the women fell deeply, they would simply walk away. Because compared to penniless and powerless orphans, they would choose women who could bring them advantages. The Marquis of Wellington, with his capabilities, could easily marry the daughter of an earl or a duke. He wanted to advise Anna, but she wouldn't listen. Joseph was therefore deeply worried, constantly frowning. Until one snowy day, Anna fell ill and couldn't get out of bed. Joseph called the housekeeper and summoned a doctor. After the examination, Anna lay in bed, crying into her hands. Joseph comforted her, but Anna remained distraught. "No, why is this happening to me?" "Joseph, you don't understand. Tonight is the Marquis's party. If I'm not there, many women will be eyeing him, trying to take my place. Oh God, why tonight of all nights? No, I must get up, I must go to the party." But she struggled even to sit up, eventually collapsing back into despairing sobs. The Marquis of Wellington was her only chance to become an aristocratic lady, and she was unwilling to miss it at any cost. Joseph held her down, preventing her from getting up. "Don't be foolish, Anna. You need to rest and recover. If the Marquis loves you, no one can steal your place. If it can be stolen, then he certainly doesn't love you, and marrying him wouldn't bring you happiness. No. Marrying him will definitely make me happy. Anna sobbed desperately. As she heard the music from the party begin, she buried her face in the pillow and cried even harder. While Joseph comforted her, she suddenly grabbed his hand, staring at him intently. Joseph was puzzled. Anna? Anna, help me, Joseph, help me. Joseph, what are you talking about? Anna's gaze was firm and deep, piercing through the candlelight, reminiscent of a lighthouse suddenly illuminating the dark, deep sea, bringing hope and a strange madness. Joseph, you and I look almost identical. You're even more beautiful than I am. If you were a woman, the Marquis would be mad for you too. I can't miss tonight's party. If I can't go myself, then you must go in my place. Joseph, pretend to be me and go to the party for me. Chapter 4. You're mad, Anna? Joseph wrenched his hand from Anna's, stumbling back a few steps. He stared at her, disbelief filling his eyes. Anna, be reasonable. Focus on recovering. We can talk about the banquet later. You'll have plenty of other opportunities. Joseph turned to leave, but a loud thud made him jump. Looking back, he saw Anna had collapsed on the floor. He rushed back to her side, helping her up. Anna covered her face and sobbed, "Won't even you help me?" Joseph's heart ached for her, but he was also troubled. He murmured, "Your idea is absurd. So, you're content to watch another woman steal the position of Marchioness, a position that rightfully belongs to me? But we also have royal blood, yet we haven't enjoyed the life we deserve. And them? Those women attending the ball, some are even daughters of merchants. Lowly people who bought their gentleman titles with money, common blood flowing through their veins. Why should they live better than me? Even Elizabeth can flaunt her superiority in front of me. I haven't had a new dress in a year. Do you know that? Joseph. Help me." Anna was usually lively and proud, always cheerful and charming. Even though Joseph was a boy, their grandfather favored Anna. He didn't much care for Joseph's introverted and quiet nature. Joseph, too, preferred to see Anna spirited and triumphant. Unable to refuse her plea any longer, he silently nodded. "Only this once. But you must understand. If a man can be seduced by another woman just because he doesn't see you at one banquet, it means his heart isn't with you. Anna, don't get in too deep." Anna was overjoyed, unable to heed his warning. She nodded repeatedly, I know. Please, Joseph, hurry and change your clothes. They're in the chest on the table. Open it. It's a new dress, sewn 3 days ago. They say it's the latest fashion in the court. I haven't even tried it on yet. If you weren't my dear Joseph, I wouldn't let you wear it." Joseph gave a wry smile. He didn't want to take advantage of this at all. Anna urged him incessantly, and Joseph, having no choice, opened the chest and took out the exquisitely styled dress. The tailoring was meticulous, the fabric luxurious, with intricate patterns. The hem of the dress had a layer of thin gauze, making it appear light and flowing. Inside the chest were also black gloves, inlaid with gold thread, sequins, and small gems. Beside the gloves was a tall hat, adorned with lace and beautiful artificial flowers. It was an expensive and exquisite outfit. Whoever prepared the dress for Anna was very thoughtful, perhaps guessing that Anna didn't have matching shoes, gloves, and a hat, and so provided the complete set. Perhaps he could believe in the Marquis's sincerity towards Anna. Joseph put on the dress. It wasn't too difficult, but he couldn't manage the corset nor the hair. The current fashion for ladies was to wear their hair in a high bun, paired with a beautiful tall hat. Men usually kept their hair short, but Joseph, due to his empty pockets, hadn't had a haircut in a year. Joseph walked out and stood before Anna. Wearing women's clothing for the first time, he felt incredibly ashamed. Anna stared at him intently, her expression strange. Joseph was mortified. "I told you this was a ridiculous idea." No. Anna gently embraced Joseph and tightened the corset. "Joseph, you are absolutely beautiful. If you were a girl, any man would be captivated by you." Joseph took Anna's words as comfort. "I can't compare to you at all." At his words, Anna's expression became even stranger. She gestured at Joseph's waist and had to admit, it was even smaller than her own. "Let me style your hair into a lady's bun." Joseph gasped, feeling Anna had tightened the corset too much, making it difficult to breathe. "Good heavens, Anna, can you loosen the laces at the back a bit?" "No." Anna firmly refused and tightened it further. Then she began styling Joseph's hair into a lady's bun, practically pulling his scalp, and Joseph let out cries of pain, regretting his earlier agreement. After much effort, it was finally done. Anna looked at the Joseph before her, her eyes filled with a daze, occasionally flashing with obsession. "My most outstanding creation." Joseph tugged at the dress uncomfortably. "Is this all right?" He was disheartened. "I hope I don't look like a monkey making a fool of myself." There was no mirror in the room, so he couldn't see what he looked like. But he knew it must be awful. Anna shooed him out, demanding he captivate the Marquis of Wellington. Joseph walked hesitantly, stopping every few steps to adjust the dress. When he saw Simon, the butler, he averted his gaze, not daring to look him in the eye. Butler Simon's expression remained impassive. At first glance, his pupils dilated slightly, then he said, "Miss Anna, has your fever subsided?" He hadn't recognized him. Joseph nodded randomly, keeping his mouth shut, afraid to speak. Butler Simon was suspicious, but wouldn't entertain the absurd notion of the siblings swapping identities. He led the way, wanting to look back, but the thought of that face, more beautiful than any court rose, stopped him. Undoubtedly, Joseph's arrival stunned everyone at the banquet. The gentlemen were captivated, each wanting to pluck this rose. The ladies, while jealous, were also deeply wary of her. She appeared flustered, helpless, and pitiful, with clear spring water rippling in her emerald green eyes, and a beautiful face like a flower blooming in the morning. She was like a fawn that had wandered into view from the forest, delicate and lovely, making people want to rush to her side and protect her. Joseph's body was stiff with tension. He warily surveyed his surroundings, aware of the gazes lingering on him. Had they discovered his secret, Joseph forced himself to remain calm, trying to avoid their eyes. A gentle and refined gentleman appeared before Joseph, inviting him to the first dance. Joseph's palms were sweating with nervousness. He didn't know how to dance at all. He would definitely be exposed. This thought pierced through his chaotic mind. At the same time, a pleasant male voice came from behind him, very close. In that instant, Joseph's scalp prickled, a tingling sensation spreading from his back to his neck, like a winter sea breeze. "Excuse me, she's my partner." Joseph turned around and saw the tall, handsome, almost beautiful man smiling at him, a fleeting strangeness in his eyes. He was a tall, handsome man who could be described as beautiful, with light gray eyes, light gray hair, and skin of an unhealthy pallor. He was like the winter sky, the kind seen through a small window in a castle attic, hanging over the withered black woods. Joseph pressed his lips tightly together, speechless. This man was the Marquis of Wellington. This was their first meeting. Chapter 5. People gradually entered the dance floor, twirling and swaying. Many young ladies sat around the perimeter, unasked by gentlemen due to their looks or lack of dowry. Perhaps they would sit out the entire evening. However, everyone present, including the gentlemen and ladies on the dance floor, would steal glances toward a certain spot as they whirled. Each harbored their own secret thoughts, then exchanged knowing smiles with their partners. Joseph saw the Marquis of Wellington for the first time. He was much younger and more handsome than imagined. When he looked at Joseph, his eyes were deep and focused, seemingly full of affection. But Joseph knew that these gentlemen looked at every girl with apparent deep emotion. However, the Marquis's gaze wasn't always affectionate. Sometimes, it held a sharp scrutiny. This usually happened when Joseph, out of nervousness, made a mistake. Facing the Marquis's sharp gaze, he would force a smile. The Marquis of Wellington leaned against a stone pillar, his right hand resting on a gold cane with an agate handle. He looked down at Joseph. "You are beautiful tonight, more beautiful than I have ever seen you." His voice was as light as smoke when he offered this compliment, making it hard to discern its sincerity. It sounded like a lover's whisper, yet Joseph felt it was merely polite conversation appropriate for the occasion, his expression unchanging. Joseph lowered his head and smiled, not daring to speak. The Marquis, seemingly unconcerned, sighed and uttered a long string of unfamiliar, melodious words. Joseph vaguely understood it was French, which he didn't actually understand, but Anna did. Anna's grandmother was French, and Anna loved the beautiful, charming sounds of the language, so she pestered her grandmother to teach her. Joseph, however, didn't particularly like French. He had tried to learn it before but quickly gave up. French sounded very melodious, each word uttered feeling like a soul-searing kiss. Joseph found it too unrestrained, like the innate passion of the French. He was conservative and felt shy about it, so he always tried to avoid anything related to sex. Now, interpreted by this man before him, it truly did sound beautiful. It was still as tender, but with a touch of detachment, not a fiery passion, but a gentle, lake-like quality. Compared to the pain of burning, the gentle drowning, unnoticed, was equally terrifying. The Marquis of Wellington. What do you think? Joseph's expression stiffened for a moment. He nodded and continued to smile, not understanding a word. He could vaguely make out a few words: thorn, black snake, kill, and rose. He could almost guess the meaning. Many gentlemen love to use these seemingly romantic words to express their melancholic thoughts. At times like this, all one needed to do was agree. So, Joseph lowered his voice. I agree with you. Fortunately, his voice was much softer than other men's. Lowered further, it wasn't much different from a woman's if one didn't listen carefully. He kept his head down and therefore didn't see the smile on the Marquis of Wellington's handsome face falter upon hearing his reply, then curve into a subtle arc. Lost in thought, Joseph suddenly felt a pair of extremely pale hands grasp his arm. The icy touch made him shiver. For some unknown reason, he suddenly thought of the sea. The cold seawater, rising with the sea breeze, lapping at his ankles, freezing his entire foot numb. Joseph disliked this feeling. He preferred all things warm and instinctively wanted to pull away. The movement wasn't large, but he remembered Anna's instructions and forcibly suppressed his aversion. The Marquis of Wellington's voice came from above, the tone ornate and enigmatic, but so soft that Joseph could barely hear it. Your hands are warm, different from before. Joseph remembered that Anna's hands and feet were always icy in winter. In an instant he felt his whole body turn cold. He was afraid of being discovered. It was rumored that the Marquis of Wellington was unpredictable. If his deception was discovered, he and Anna would be thrown out penniless. He didn't care about himself, but Anna was still ill. So, he couldn't be discovered. The next moment, the Marquis of Wellington said, "Perhaps it's because you're ill. People with high fevers have elevated body temperatures." Joseph gradually relaxed, looked up, and gave the Marquis a cautious, ingratiating smile. For some reason, he felt the Marquis become even more intimidating at this moment. He hunched his shoulders, his heart clenching and releasing, unbearably uncomfortable. He just hoped the ball would end soon. He was exhausted from dealing with the man before him. So warm. Joseph, what? The Marquis gave him a fleeting smile, not the polite, formal smile from before, but something a little more captivating. Joseph was momentarily mesmerized. When he came to his senses, he was already being led to the center of the dance floor. Joseph frantically clung to the Marquis, whispering, "My lord, please spare me. I can't dance. I'll cause you trouble. Please spare me, my lord." However, the Marquis of Wellington cruelly refused his plea, grasped his waist and hand, and began to waltz. He'd heard this dance originated in France, bodies close, limbs entwined, skirts swirling. The Marquis of Wellington, "Leave it to me, ma rose." This French phrase murmured in his ear. Joseph understood. My rose. Joseph felt his soul leave his body, leaving behind an empty shell for the man before him to command. He manipulated that soulless shell like a puppeteer manipulating a marionette, raising hands and feet, not by its own will. The hem of the skirt rose in a wave of rose-colored arcs, the brilliant lights spinning continuously, the man's black suit, the woman's silently parted red lips, the clinking of glasses, clink, a sudden silence. Joseph came to his senses and realized the dance had ended and the next song had begun. People were stepping onto the dance floor, and the icy grip on his left hand suddenly vanished. Joseph's gaze followed, only catching a glimpse of the figure disappearing into the crowd. The Marquis of Wellington released him, walked away, and vanished. Joseph stood still, catching his breath. Suddenly, someone else took his hand. He looked up and saw a stranger. This was the music for exchanging partners, and everyone on the dance floor was eagerly exchanging, pouring out their enthusiasm. They weren't troubled by life. Some might be strapped for cash, but they wouldn't forego extravagant pleasures. Before he knew it, the person in front of him had become the Marquis of Wellington again. This man seemed to control his body, yet could leave at any moment. Joseph felt a sense of danger, a creeping unease. Fortunately, it was only for tonight. After the ball, the Marquis of Wellington personally escorted Joseph back. They stood in the long corridor, moonlight streaming in through the small windows, falling on the floor. The floor was very clean, scrubbed and polished daily by maids on their knees. Even after a century, it remained spotless. Joseph glanced at the Marquis of Wellington, lifted the hem of his skirt, and curtsied, "Good night, my lord." The Marquis gazed at him silently, raised his hand. At some point he had put on gloves, removed a glove, and then placed his palm against Joseph's face. His thumb brushed against Joseph's red lips, his deep, icy gaze making Joseph tremble. Joseph almost recoiled and fled, but just as he was about to break, the Marquis removed his hand and took 2 steps back. "Good night." Joseph nodded and hurried away, filled with trepidation. Reaching the end of the corridor, he hastily looked back and saw the Marquis still standing there motionless. He couldn't see the Marquis's face clearly, but he saw his shadow, elongated, distorted, and grotesque in the moonlight, like an evil demon. Joseph pushed open the door and entered the room, breathing shallowly. He took off his hat, gloves, jewelry, and pleaded with Anna, "Are you asleep? If not, please take off my corset quickly. I can hardly breathe, Anna. Anna?" He turned and saw Anna sitting up against the headboard, pale and with an icy gaze. Joseph froze. "What's wrong?" Anna was angry, her beautiful face frozen by rage, becoming sharp and frightening. She stared at Joseph with a dark, cold gaze for a long moment, then slowly smiled. "I'm fine, Joseph." She helped Joseph out of the dress, washed off the makeup and embraced him. "Thank you for tonight, Joseph. Thank God I'm well now. You don't have to pretend to be me and deceive others anymore." Joseph remained silent. Finally, he hugged Anna back and whispered, "Yes, thank the Lord."